Hello, denizens of the internet. It is my pleasure once again to put on my former network executive reaction jacket and greenlight or not the latest iteration of Frasier, one of the funniest and most popular sitcoms of all time. Spoiler alert, this short-run version of Frasier is available only on Paramount Streaming Plus, which doesn't have a lot on it. Is it worthwhile to pony up the monthly fee just for the updated Frasier? When I had heard that this was in production, I honestly groaned. We have been in the midst of a sitcom clone war, which included Murphy Brown, awful, Will and Grace, actually not bad, Night Court, horrific, hide your eyes, Roseanne, which turned into The Connors, it was okay, One Day at a Time, the Cuban variant, and a few others I never watched. All these examples were resurrections of previous hit shows, taking into account the ages of the returning characters, often for laughs, but mostly they were just wrinkly versions of their predecessors. I'm surprised they didn't try to resurrect Golden Girls. It would have been an empty set. Cheap to produce, though. In contrast, Frasier does what it did in the original. The pompous Frasier Crane character moved from Boston to Seattle, of all places, for this Cheers spinoff. Then they went to Chicago at the very end, which nobody watched. And in this update, he moved back to Boston. It's kind of brilliant because returning to his old haunt provides a clean break from Frasier V1, but it also provides an opportunity to squeeze in some of the old Cheers gang. Will Sam Malone show up? How about Woody? Carla? Diane? His son Frederick lives in Boston, so will Lilith show up? I mean, we're getting very close to Picard Season 3 territory for member-berry explosions. None of them showed up in the pilot episode. Of course, Niles and Daphne have ducked out of this reprise. I honestly think that it would have been a mistake if they did return, as then the show would have just been retreading old jokes. John Mahoney had died, and the death of Martin Crane is an important part that delivered good, dramatic, heartfelt moments in the pilot. Adding things up as the network department head, so far the math isn't too bad. But I'll definitely be asking for those Cheers cameos. One other thing that will keep me from drinking my vodka-infused Maalox is the fact that James Burrows, the director of Cheers and many Frasiers, will be helming the first two shows, using the traditional live audience multicam setup. The pilot episode starts with Frasier landing at the airport. It looks great, and so does Kelsey Grammer. Some old English guy yells for Frasier, and then they embrace. Frasier calls him corny because he is Alan Cornwall. The airport is a great place, as it's a perfect location for quick reacquainting exposition. You can say things like, "Welcome back to Boston," wink, wink, without it sounding horrible, and joke about each other's looks and make it sound natural. We've never met Alan before, but it's clear they like each other and have history. Alan provides condolences for Frasier's father. Then he asks, wasn't he traveling with Daphne's son David? David enters and immediately proves that he's a chip off the old Niles DNA block. All this happened within a minute or two of the opening. We've established location, met two new reoccurring characters, and got a very clear take on David. This is a super start. We then get a cheap joke featuring Alan at the expense of David, but it's all sounding very Frasier-like, although a bit strained. Now, as much as I loved sitcoms, I have honestly felt the sitcom boat had left the dock a long time ago. At least I'm rooting for this show. We get a Chicago and Charlotte recap, which whizzed by at the end of the original series. I'm not sure it was needed here. I had forgotten. Then a nice little bit of physical gaggery with David. Then a dumb gag featuring David, again highlighting his obsessive character, we get it, and we find out that Frasier is in Boston to do a lecture for Alan's class, and he wants to see his son, who did not go to Martin's funeral, which clearly pained Frasier. There is a bit of untidy, unnecessary exposition about Fred dropping out of Harvard, which obviously brings great shame to Frasier. And so everything we need to know is set up for this episode. Not a bad start at all. Next scene is with Frasier and Freddie. As far as I'm concerned, this entire scene was hard to watch, unfunny. I'm interrupting the regular video voiceover here to add something I thought about after I recorded this. Freddie is the one character I would not have any idea how to give funny lines to. So right now I'm going to go out on a limb and tell these professionals that I think they got Freddie wrong. If he was the total unapologetic beantowner with a Boston accent, when they meet in the hallway, Freddie might have said, "Hey, it's my absentee father." Then Frasier could say, "We did not send you to finishing school just to sound like a barbarian. This is how I sound, Dad. I'm from Boston. I can help you. I can be your Henry Higgins and you can be my Liza. If I show up at the fire station in a dress, the diversity department will be happy that they filled their quota." Those are jokes. Frasier and Freddie insults are their way of showing they love each other. At the same time, I'm not buying the performance of Jack Cutmore Scott playing Freddie. I'm getting zero chemistry between Frasier and Freddie. Then we meet Eve, who walks in asking Freddie to turn down Frasier's TV show. But if Freddie hates his father so much, why would his dad's show be on? Besides, who watches TV? If she had asked, "Can you turn down that podcast?" then at least we'd have been out of the dial phone era. Freddie has not told Frasier anything about Eve, which is good for a few jokes. Freddie is anxious to push Frasier out of the flat, and the scene descends into farce, and we are introduced to a mystery about Freddie and Eve's relationship featuring someone named John. The next scene is at the lecture room where Frasier is hailed as a hero, and we get introduced to Olivia Finch, extremely well played by Tox Olagundoya. Hope I got that right. We get to see Alan's and her combative relationship, which I loved, and the final plot point is revealed. She wants Frasier to teach in her department at Harvard. Unfortunately, Frasier is off to Paris, which we know is a meaningless rebuff. The threesome move to a bar. Frasier makes beer jokes, including a cheers remark. It's a nice scene about helping Frasier reconcile with his son. The next scene has Frasier showing up unexpected at Freddie's doorstep with a bag of groceries. There is an effete steak joke, which is a cheat, as Freddie, as drawn, would have understood this. Nephew David shows up out of the blue as our surrogate Niles, then Alan and Olivia, and the farce is full on. Not that Frasier was unfamiliar to the form. Olivia is immediately sexually attracted to Freddie. I'm sure this presages things to come, but I'm still confused about his relationship with Eve. Freddie asks her to pretend she's his girlfriend, and with some added subterfuge, but we find out the John in question, it just happens to be Eve's baby. It all gets very silly and not very funny. David's food allergy gag, however, was very funny. So far, the show feels very much like an old car trying to start. The laugh track is getting oppressive because the jokes aren't landing. This scene in the kitchen starts putting the convoluted pieces together of Eve and Freddie's relationship, but Frasier draws the wrong conclusion. More farce ensues. With the baby crying gag, the truth is all revealed, and we find out Eve is a widowed mother of Freddie's firefighter partner. Freddie has offered to help Eve and the baby. I can't see how this generates useful stories. It's very forced. I'm interrupting myself again because I realize that obviously Eve and Freddie will develop a romantic relationship over time. I cannot see any other comedic use for Eve. Duh. Then we get the best scene in the show, confronting Freddie missing his grandfather's funeral. It's dramatic and touching. The final scene has Frasier showing up again, announcing he's taken the job at Harvard and staying in Boston. Eve is very happy, while Freddie shows his disdain. This was very forced and did not follow the rapprochement from the previous scene. Then a funny gag about walking to Frasier's new apartment right across from Freddie's. Frasier has also bought the entire complex. Perhaps this will provide access to even more strange and wacky characters. The end. The high point is Kelsey Grammer, of course. It has enough pieces working in its favor. Would I have greenlit it? Yes. It would have been silly not to. When a network exec greenlights something, it's not so much about a deep analysis of how good a show is, because you just never know. But the pieces in play must make the chances of it work that much better. I'm not convinced the producers nailed Freddie, nor do I think they hired the right actor, especially when Alan and Olivia are very funny and Eve and Frasier have more chemistry. But I think the producers made a casting mistake, and of course, this is only my opinion. Frasier mentions how Freddie is like his mother Lilith, that he's disappointed that Freddie dropped out of Harvard. Why not have him just refuse to go to begin with? He's a fireman. Freddie should have been the resurrection of Martin, the policeman. So this show was just okay. Better than most of the clones, but I expected more. Now I'll watch the second episode and I'll be right back. I'm back. I'm going to make this very short. Episode 2 was much better, with several highlight gags. And they actually brought up the issues Frasier had with his father and how Freddie reminds Frasier of Martin. So score 1 for the former network executive. I assure you, I did not review the second show before writing this. The on-screen chemistry between Kelsey and Jack is still just okay. Not even close to what David Hyde Pierce provided or John Mahoney. The fire crew were great. You could tell there was more real audience reaction in it because the jokes were better. There you go, denizens. A twofer, as we say in Canada. Did you see it? Love to hear your opinion. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.